What's up, TRG fam? It's your boy Frost. I stream on my own channel and I stream for Love Thy Nerd. If you're a fan of telling nerds that Jesus loves them, I encourage you to check him out. Logan's asking the tough questions. What is your favorite video game? Let me start off by saying I am a Bungie fan. So Halo, Destiny 2, everything in between. I love it all. But if I have to get specifically, words are hard. If I have to get specific, my favorite game, I would pick Halo 2 specifically. Halo was huge when I was in junior high school. I'm sure you guys, many of you who are my age, remember just having LAN parties. My youth group, people in my school, like we would all get together and do these huge LAN parties. I remember specific things from playing Halo 2. One of which of those memories is I remember playing Lockout. If you are familiar with Halo 2, you will remember this map because I think it was everyone's favorite. But Lockout is this map that's like floating in the sky. You can fall off, fall to your death. I remember my youth pastor teaching me to always throw grenades because he would constantly fall off the map and just chuck a grenade in hopes that he would stick someone, blow someone up, but like he would fall off, throw a grenade, and like hope for the best. Sometimes, like the rare occurrence, he would get a kill, but I just remember that we started calling like falling off the map Saunders, because Pastor Saunders, that was our high school youth pastor. So we'd fall off the map, throw a grenade, and be like, I pulled a Saunders, or like Saunders. That was one of the life lessons I remember. Is always throw grenades and never stop moving. Those are two life lessons I remember from my youth pastor. Not anything from youth group, but instead, here's how you play video games. My math teacher, like we would play with him. He was in our youth group, like one of the youth leaders. Every time he would die, every time something would happen, like his phrase was "good night." So we would start just mocking him, saying that over and over again. We were in Spanish class. So we would just start saying like "Buenos noches" and, just making fun of him. In addition to playing multiplayer with friends, Halo 2, like the story is my absolute favorite out of any of the Halo games. Mostly because like you start out and you're learning about this Arbiter and you're learning about the Covenant. Like the Covenant is attacking you and you're fighting your way through your own ship. You're trying to get to this bomb that the Covenant left on your ship. They're gonna blow you up. You're fighting your way through the Covenant, trying to get there. You get to it, and Master Chief delivers the best line in all of video game history. He asks the captain for permission to leave the ship, and the captain's like, why? And Master Chief just comes back in the most epic fashion and says, to give the Covenant back their bomb. Captain grants him permission, and he dives out of this ship, like hits the airlock, gets sucked out with this bomb, and he is just riding it through space, through explosions, ships shooting everywhere, dives straight through space, right into the like mothership of the Covenant, and lets it go, bounces off, floats back through space, who knows, and just blows up the mothership. And it is just so satisfying to be able to like play as Master Chief, get that done, and then you continue on in the game and you're learning about the Arbiter. You start playing as the Arbiter, and then your paths cross and you team up, and I'm lost for words right now. Words are hard, but it's so good. It's so fun. The story is like compelling and it's fun to play, and I can't think of another story that I've played more. Like, this is a fantastic game. It's my favorite all time. No questions asked until you ask me tomorrow. I'm sure it'll change, flip-flop, just like Logan. Now that I've talked through all of this, I don't know what other game I would have picked.
I just noticed there's a sippy cup behind me. Okay, so anyway, we'll leave that in there and you can do whatever you want with it. Hey everybody, how you guys doing? My name is Aki. I'm one half of Aki and Peach, and the Reformed Gamers asked me to go ahead and put together a short video on my favorite video game. And if it wasn't obvious due to the characters sitting here beside me, my favorite video game of all time is a game called Chrono Trigger. Some of you guys might be familiar with it. Here's all of the main characters right here, and I just love the 16-bit era of video games. I mean, a lot of people consider that to be the golden age of gaming. And so the game was released in 1995. It was a critical part of my childhood. In fact, actually, it's funny, I didn't have a Super Nintendo at the time, so you know, I did the bad thing, right? I emulated it as a child, but I remember in high school, I played it over and over and over and over again, and it was one of those games that just never got old to me. The story was compelling. The fact that there were 13 different endings to try to find and discover was incredible and amazing. And I mean, I loved it so much. I own it now on PC. I actually have the original Super Nintendo cart. It was just such a neat game, and one of the things that I really love about it is Akira Toriyama did the character design, and that really shows in the, I have that on PlayStation too. It shows in the PlayStation re-release because there's animated cutscenes, which are very clearly done by Akira Toriyama, who did this little anime called Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super. You may or may not have heard of those. Yeah, the fact that there was just this wide-ranging story, branching side quests, so many different things to do and explore and just pour into this game. And then the replayability to try to find all of the different endings with New Game Plus. And the music, oh man, the music was partially done by Nobuo Uematsu. It was primarily done by another composer. I don't remember the guy's name off the top of my head. It's Yasunori Mitsuda wrote most of the music. And there's one song in there. It's a Frog's theme. And I will forever remember that tune specifically. It has so much meaning and value for me. Personally, it's a song that motivates me, and I just really, really, really love. And I think the thing that I resonate with the most in that game is there's several different characters. Specifically, one of the characters that turns out to be a villain that you can recruit and turn into a good guy, and then one of the main good characters. Was relational complexity there, but anyway, Frog, real name is Glenn, was also a bully and kind of an outcast, and I kind of identify with that as someone who was bullied in high school. So it was just one of the reasons why that game really resonated strongly with me, and why that game is just my all-time favorite.
Hello there, Reformed Jedi here to share a tale with you about what I consider to be the greatest game of all time. It was the mid-1990s and the pinnacle of the Super Nintendo Entertainment System era. I was but a Padawan of about 10 years of age, playing everything I could on my older brother's console, from Mario, Metroid, Donkey Kong, and everything in between. But it was really then that I discovered the role-playing game genre. The first two games that got me hooked into that scene were The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past and Secret of Mana. It was the latter that introduced me to the greatest game developer of that age, Squaresoft. From that moment on, I absorbed every iota of information that Nintendo Power Magazine had to offer from the developer, and it was in that glorious book of knowledge, guidance, and advertisements that I discovered what would be the game of all games, Chrono Trigger. Now, as a child, I was far from popular and had very few friends, so I spent most of my time on my own in my own imagination. Then came along this game. To enter a world that offered time travel, heroes, villains, romance, magic monsters, and friendship simply called to me. I mean, who wouldn't want to be an average kid with spiky hair and an affinity for samurai swords, with a brilliant best friend, wandering around the Millennial Fair, bump into a pretty girl with secrets in her eyes, and then be thrust into an adventure featuring dozens of engaging characters and spanning millions of years? Speaking of the characters, there are several companions that accompany you along the way. For instance, a robot from the future you hope to save, a cursed knight sworn to protect the royal family of the Middle Ages, and even a primitive cave woman with a fighter's spirit from the ancient past. All these characters and more with lives, stories, and connections of their own that further flesh out the vibrant world that surrounds you. You have a vast number of quests that actively change the world around you, some of which you don't even see the impact of until you travel to another time period. So the decisions you make in your quests actually carry an impact all the way to the end. And this is something that even most modern games still don't get right. Throughout your journey, you face many dangers. You lose friends. You save loved ones. Expose conspiracies. Potentially make allies out of enemies. All leading to the climactic confrontation that the future of all humanity hinges upon. There are so many roads that lead to this final battle with a host of different outcomes. There are 13 endings to this game with various alterations or sub-endings within those 13. The value alone in replayability is well worth the time invested. This game has had multiple ports over the years that have added animated cutscenes that draw you in further, deeper, and connect more to the narrative. They've added new missions and even an epilogue that somewhat connects to the sequel, Chrono Cross. The only downside, in my opinion, to the most recent ports would be the changes to the script. But that could just be my old man nostalgia for the original. Now, I have been vague about most of the details as not to spoil too much for those who may yet encounter Chrono Trigger for the first time. But I know if I had the ability to travel in time, I would go back to being that 10-year-old Padawan again. I would hug my parents a little tighter and then play Chrono Trigger for the first time again.
Hello, fellow architects. My name is Mefuki. I'm a massive fan of pretty much all things RPG, and the Reformed Gamers asked me to talk about my favorite video game. It was a tough decision, but I'm here to say, why is Dark Souls 3 my favorite video game of all time? I'm a very gameplay-oriented player. I'm a player that likes choice and character progression, who likes simple combat with a lot of optional depth, and who likes a world and a setting that is rich in lore and details, but most of which is hidden for you to discover if you want to. The way you level and the breadth of weapons and armor and spells that you can find make for a myriad of viable builds. You want to be a hulking barbarian type with a greatsword bigger than you are. You can do that. You want to be an assassin type that specializes in sneaking around and backstabbing your enemies. You can do that too. You want to be a magic nuking machine. Pick your element. You want to be a super tanky boy who just uses shields alone to do damage and shield bash enemies to death. The whole game, go for it. I've done it. And unlike most games, there are differences in something as basic as, say, the short sword, the long sword, and the broadsword, but not so different that you feel like only one of the options is viable. The combat, for me, was revolutionary. I used to only really love turn-based and tactical RPGs, while button-mashy action games were fun, weren't really all that engaging. Dark Souls 3 blends turn-based, tactical, give-and-take style combat with on-your-toes reactionary gameplay. Manages to take the best of both systems and fuses them into something wholly unique. Just enough emphasis on stats and numbers, the stuff I like, not to the point where you can't simply skill your way out of a tough situation. Being the third game in the series, the story is rich, if one has a mind to seek it out, and it rounds out some long-asked questions, and even introducing some more questions for those lore fiends out there who want to explore those. The setting is visually dynamic, and it oscillates between beautiful vistas and decrepit swamps. The ruins of the world, though full of monstrous creatures, are built in such a way as to make the player kind of wonder about the story behind their existence. For those who are astute enough, you'll notice that care was taken, for the most part, to create visual continuity between the vistas. You always can see where you're going and where you've been. All of this is optional. Dark Souls 3 is a game where you only get out of it what you put into it. And, as a cherry on top, the community for the game has been strong enough that there have even been some amazing mods that make the base game even better. I didn't even get into the incredible music and the sound design, but I'll wrap it up here. Those were the reasons why Dark Souls 3 is my favorite game of all time. It's a near perfect synergy of almost all my favorite things that I love about games.
When Logan asked me to choose my favorite game of all time, it was a really difficult choice. I mean, any game on my top 10 list could theoretically jump to the top on any given day. It just depends on the mood that I'm in. But really, the game that I always come back to for this question is Star Wars Jedi Knight Dark Forces 2. That may be way out of left field for you, but it's the game that I always find myself going back to play at least once every year or so. An excellent game, and there's several reasons why I think it's so good. First and foremost, nostalgia, right? Who doesn't love Star Wars? If you don't love Star Wars, okay, fine, but I love Star Wars, and so many other people do too. And so bringing Star Wars and then meshing it with the gameplay and the stylistic stuff from Doom and Duke Nukem at that time, those FPS shooters, that was such a good combination. It worked so well for us as kids, especially the age that I was, around 10 or so when it came out. I think about my childhood and the amount of times I got into lightsaber fights with my friends with those plastic lightsabers. You know, you whoosh them out and then you go and hit each other. Hit someone on the arm, they pull their arm inside their sleeve and run around without an arm. And, you know, that's excellent. And so that's brought to life in Jedi Knight. Whenever you finally get your lightsaber in game, you run up to that first Tusken Raider, slice them, and the arm chops off. Like, that was perfect. That was so perfect. It brought everything about wanting to be a Jedi, that power fantasy, to life in this game. So it's great stuff. And then, of course, just the general fact that it's Star Wars brings in all of those nostalgia factors as well. Think about the settings. You start off on Nar Shaddaa with these huge skyscrapers, and you go to the edge of the building and look down. You can't even see the ground. Now, it's all pretty low resolution, but still, I mean, your imagination fills in the blanks that you need at the time when that game came out. And then I think about all the weapons, the lightsaber, of course, the iconic lightsaber. You have to love that as part of it, but not just that. The Stormtrooper rifle is something that's very familiar to us. The bowcaster, everyone loves the bowcaster, right? Chewie's big old crossbow looking thing. What a great power weapon in the game. And so there's just lots of little things that you remember from the movies growing up, and then, you know, now those things get brought back into the shows, and so it's really cool to see all those things continue to crop up in the Star Wars universe, but having them in this game makes it all the better. Of course, you have force powers, right? And so there's nothing quite like pulling a gun out of a stormtrooper's hand and then watching him run around in circles not knowing what to do anymore. That's just a really neat little idea. And you have certain light side force powers, you have certain dark side force powers, and so it gives you some replayability. All of those things play into how good this game is. And the way that you get those force powers is by finding as many secrets as you can. So that's just one more gameplay element. Those secret areas are so fun to try and track down, and some of them are really well hidden, and so that adds just another layer of replayability and just general fun into this game. And then, of course, the music and the audio. We're talking about some of the best sound design in all of cinematic history. So you know you're not going to go wrong whenever you hear that blaster fire and it's the exact same sound that you heard in the movies, or that iconic lightsaber turning on and that sound that you get, right? That's right there in the game. And so, you know, you find yourself taking it out and putting it away and taking it out and put it away because it's so good. And then, you know, jumping on top of a building and realizing there's a TIE bomber strafing me. And the reason you know there's a TIE bomber strafing you isn't because a bomb hits you. It's because you hear that TIE engine sound that everybody knows. So the sound design, the music is excellent. Of course, John Williams' score is in there. All of those tracks that you're used to hearing in the original trilogy are ported into this game, and it just makes for an amazing experience. Of course, the story is pretty good as well. Honestly, it is very campy. It's very Star Wars. You know, a dark Jedi trying to gain a massive amount of power so that he can take over the galaxy. It's Star Wars, right? It's cheesy, but that's good. It's comfortable, and that's what you want in a game that you come back to over and over and over again. I love the fact that it's told through these FMV sequences, full motion video sequences. You have an actor, Jason Court, who plays Kyle Katarn. By the way, probably the coolest Star Wars character of all time. And if you don't know much about him, go look him up on Wikipedia or whatever, and he's just a really cool character. But you get Jason Court playing him in front of a green screen, and yeah, again, the cinematics are a little cheesy, but that's what makes it so fun. It makes it comfortable and cozy. And of course, one of the best factors in this game is the fact that it's one of the first games ever to really have good player agency integrated in. Now, it's pretty minimal. If you shoot civilians, you'll get dark side points, but the fact that the storyline actually does change a little bit, you end up falling to the dark side and becoming the Emperor in the end if you do that too many times. The fact that that's all implemented is really cool for a game made in 1998. All of these things together make this game worth playing, and so if you haven't ever checked out any of the Jedi Knight games, you know, maybe you start in Jedi Academy, maybe you start in Jedi Outcast, maybe you started in Jedi Fallen Order, which really is somewhat of a spiritual successor to this game, in my opinion, although it takes more cues from Dark Souls than it does from something like Doom. But they do have a shared ancestry here, and what a great way of getting into it. So you can, if you need to work your way back to this game, do it, but by all means get there, because this game is a gem and it deserves to be played by everyone.
The number one game on my list, my favorite video game of all time, is and has always been The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. And I know it's like a cliche pick at this point. Everybody has praised it. Everybody has said, you know, all the great things about it and said that it's their favorite. And then we've gone through the phase of hating it because that's cool, and then back to the phase of it's great. And I think now we're back in the phase of hating it. But it has remained constant as my number one game. There's been other games that have been knocked off and moved around and whatever, but nothing has challenged Ocarina of Time for me. I got it whenever I was 11 years old at Christmas of 1998. So I was 11 years old, and I was just the perfect age to experience an adventure. Everything from the gameplay with Z-targeting, making combat more fun and accessible, the music, which still, I mean, so many of our tracks are based on music that started in Ocarina of Time. Some of them came from Link to the Past, but a lot of them started in Ocarina of Time, and they're still a part of our the Zelda series. The dungeons are done so well, with the exception of the Fire Temple. I'm not a big fan, but the rest of them, man, they're so well done. I feel like I'm actually in that universe. They feel very believable, and for me, that's a big part of what makes a game one of my favorites. Is it has to be something that makes me feel like I'm a part of that virtual universe. It has to draw me in, and Zelda does. I think that a big reason for that is that the story of Ocarina of Time is based so much around growing up, beginning in the Kokiri Forest and not understanding who he is and why he's different and doesn't have a fairy and all that kind of stuff. And then after the Deku Tree dies and kind of tells Link the state of the world and what he has to do, he basically has to go save the world. And being told that as a young boy is a huge, daunting task. And as he goes out and starts to try and achieve that momentous feat, he inadvertently lets Ganondorf take over Hyrule. And he's sealed away in the Sacred Realm for 7 years, wakes up as an adult to see that the world has basically collapsed. Everything has fallen apart around him, and he goes out as an adult who actually has the ability to make some change in a dark world. And he does. You, as the player, get to experience the story with him of overcoming incredible challenges and saving the world. I've played a lot of games with epic stories, but it still, to me, is the most epic story created for a interactive video game, where I really feel like when I beat that game, I feel like I saved the world. And it's such a powerful experience to play through, and it's one that I still have fun. Like there's some stories that really like tug at your emotions or whatever, but this one, it has all the right pieces. It hits all the right notes. No pun intended. Ocarina melodies, you get the joke. Ocarina of Time, I don't think anything's ever going to debunk it or take it off its pedestal in my eyes. The 3DS remake was incredible. I bought a 3DS just to play that and to see if it was just nostalgia, and it wasn't. For me, that game still reigns supreme. My favorite video game of all time is and might always be Ocarina of Time.